Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio, serving it up hot and fresh in the Bible Bistro since March of 2013. Today we're looking at verses 10, 11, and 12. Now, as I said yesterday at the end of the program, the psalmist turns his attention now to the reader. He's been talking to the Lord. I don't know if you would call this a prayer. He's making statements about the Lord in the first 5 verses, and then in 6 through 9 he's talking directly to him. You covered. At your rebuke, you've set a bound. So, he's making this direct appeal to God, although it's really not an appeal. It's just actually making statements about him to him. Now he turns his attention to the reader, beginning in verse 10. And in verse 10 through verse 12, we're still talking about water. Here the psalmist begins, and let me read beginning in verse 10. He sends the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. So all this is about water. He's talking to us now, the reader. He sends. So he's, he's referring to the Lord, speaking to us as we read this. He sends the springs into the valleys. So water is necessary. Water cannot stay in its boundary because we need water here on dry land. We cannot survive without it. So what does the Lord do? He sends the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. So now there's water in the dry land. And what does it do? Verse 11, they give drink to every beast of the field. So the beast, the cattle, all the wild asses, they quench their thirst. So we're talking about the wild animals in places that are far-flung and unknown to us, perhaps. By them shall the fowls of the heavens have their habitation. Have you ever noticed, if you go to the coast, any coast, you'll find that there's an abundance of feathered wildlife, either in the water or flying near the water. They make their homes near the water. They get their food from the water. And if they're not there right on the coast, they're somewhere close by. And that's what we have here. The fowls of the heaven have their habitation by the waters, either the waters in the springs or the waters by the seaside. So he's taking care of the wild beast, every beast. He's taking care of the fowls of the heaven. That's taken care of. And it says, which sing among the branches. We know that there are branches there because there's water there. And if there's water there, then we have streams. And if we have streams, then we go back to Psalm 1, and we're talking about the tree planted by water. And so we know that the inhabitants of the air are going to build their nests in branches of trees. The trees are going to be established by a water source. The water source helps them to grow. And so we have this flourishing that's taking place on dry ground because of what God has done with the water. He rebuked it. He sent it to its place. He set a bound that it could not pass over. And then he sent springs of water into the dry land so that every beast, all the wild asses, and the fowls of the heaven, notice that he does not try to distinguish or differentiate between all the different fowls of the heaven. They all need water, and he is providing it for them. The provision and providence of God here is seen so very clearly. He is maintaining his own creation. Join me tomorrow. We'll look at verses 13 through 15 and continue this section about what God has done as the psalmist speaks to the reader on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.